We begin with a major development out of New York City. Police have apprehended the key suspect in yesterday's mass shooting. 10 people were shot and at least 13 others were injured in the subway attack. Authorities announced the arrest a short time ago.
Officers, in response to a Crime Stoppers tip, stopped Mr. James at 1:42 p.m. at the corner of St. Mark's Place and First Avenue in Manhattan. He was taken into custody without incident and has been transported to an NYPD facility. He will be charged with committing yesterday's appalling crime in Brooklyn.
The gun used in this, a 9mm Glock, which was recovered at this crime scene, was purchased by Mr. James in 2011 in Ohio. We tracked Mr. James, and his last known whereabouts was 7th Avenue and 9th Street in Park Slope, entering the subway.
We've got journalist William Denslow standing by live in New York. So, Will, what more do we know about the suspect and the evidence police say ties him to the scene?
Well, Andrew, after a 30-hour manhunt, Mayor Eric Adams saying, "We got him." This, of course, comes after a huge investigation requiring hundreds of law enforcement here in New York as they tried to tighten the net around Frank James. Now, as you mentioned, we understand now, according to law enforcement, that he was arrested after there was a Crime Stoppers tip that came in that someone matching Frank James' description was found in a McDonald's in Manhattan's East Village. Police then went to that site. They couldn't find him, but they soon located him in that neighborhood as they were driving around the area afterwards. What we know is that law enforcement have been telling us that what we saw is that they began to identify Frank James as a person of interest after a set of keys were found here at the 36th Street subway station where this attack occurred. They found a set of keys that were linked to a U-Haul rental van under Frank James's name. That U-Haul van was found less than 10 subway stops away from where I'm speaking to you from here in Brooklyn. That is essentially the information that law enforcement had to go on. They then found further information about Frank James, including some social media videos that they were looking into and continue to investigate. We understand now, according to police here, that he's facing some federal terrorism charges and could face life behind bars if convicted.
And Will, the suspect was known to police. What do we know about that?
Absolutely right. On top of these videos that have some disparaging comments about the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, as well as grievances pointed towards New York City issues such as homelessness as well, which continue to be investigated. We also know that, as you mentioned, that the gun that's apparently used in this attack was purchased by James at a pawn shop in the state of Ohio back in 2011. Law enforcement also telling the press that they were aware of a number of former arrests by James dating back around 20 or so years, including 9 here in New York City. Let's have a listen.
His arrest history in New York is 9 prior arrests dating from 1992 to 1998. Those include possession of burglary tools 4 times, criminal sex act, theft of service 2 times. He was arrested on a New Jersey warrant. He also has a criminal tampering. He has 3 arrests in New Jersey in 1991, 1992, and 2007.
Now, law enforcement quizzed as to what exactly a potential motive was behind this attack. Law enforcement say they'll be looking particularly at those social media videos that have circulated, but they say that is still very much subject to investigation. Police saying that their immediate priority over the past 30 hours was to get this individual off the streets of New York.
And Will, now that that has happened, how has the mood in New York City changed now that there is a suspect in custody?
Andrew, there's certainly seen a degree of relief, of course, on Tuesday evening. I heard reports of things like sports matches, football games being called off even because people that live in this area didn't want to get on the subway system, either for general safety or because there was still an active gunman, an active shooter still effectively on the loose here in southern Brooklyn, where I'm speaking to you from. So there's certainly a relief when it comes to this particular incident, but there's still a wider sense of trepidation for many. Of course, over the last couple of years, we've seen a rise in shootings here in New York City, really since the start of the pandemic. This year alone, we've seen a rise in violence on the city subway system as well. So these are underlying concerns that have certainly been amplified, whether the suspect is on the loose or not. This is being tied very much by elected officials, be it Governor Kathy Hochul or New York City's Mayor Eric Adams, to the wider issue of gun violence. Both of those elected officials say this goes beyond being a New York City or a New York State issue, but is very much a US issue. Eric Adams saying on Tuesday that it's impossible to stop a flood if your basement keeps on allowing water in. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, in the wake of James's arrest, says that she vows to do more to get guns off the streets of New York.
Will, thank you. That is journalist William Denslow, live in New York City.